The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a Chronicle sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. Sunny Tuesday here in Southern California. We have Cousin Sal coming up about 30 to 35 minutes talking about the first ever Mets no-hitter. He's very excited, even though it happened a few days ago. First, we want to talk NHL, Stanley Cup Finals, Kings, Devils. On the Horn, one of our favorite writers. He runs the very successful and entertaining Puck Daddy blog on Yahoo.com. He's been on the BS Report before. He's here now. He's a frustrated Devils fan. Greg Wyshynski, what's happening?
What I like to say, Bill, is that beating the Rangers was our Stanley Cup. I like to say that especially when my team is down 3-0.
That's good. I like you're already in spin control mode. I like it.
Exactly, yes.
So, I admittedly did not watch a lot of the Devils this year. Did this team overachieve by making the finals? Because it kind of feels that way.
I think they might have. I mean, this definitely was not a Devils team that I came into the season thinking was going to be a Stanley Cup finalist. They ran into some good matchups. They played the Flyers after the Flyers were coming off that dissection of the Pittsburgh Penguins in the first round, and I think the Flyers took them a little lightly. Game 2 against the Devils, Kovalchuk got hurt. He didn't play. The Flyers got up 1-0. The Devils came roaring back and didn't look back. And then that Rangers series could have gone either way, but the Devils were able to really kind of exert their offense a little bit against that shot-blocking Tortorella defense and found a way to beat Lundqvist a couple times and won that series. I keep on trying to tell people they're a good offensive team, but they've not scored a legit goal in this series against the Kings. Maybe they overachieved, but I also think that there's an obvious answer to this whole thing, which is that the Kings are just damn good and have been able to control this series in a lot of aspects that the Devils were able to control previous series.
Yeah, and it's hockey, and there's a little luck involved. Like Kovalchuk hits the crossbar on a shot that Quick had no chance of stopping, and if that goes in, it's tied 1-1.
Oh yeah, for sure. And Marty Brodeur after the second game was telling me, that a bounce here, a bounce there in an overtime game, and all of a sudden the Devils could have been the ones that are up 2-0. But that said, man, the Kings just take everything away that the Devils want to do. The Devils want to get the puck into the zone and be physical and get chances down low. And the Kings just grab the puck and throw it out. Or Quick will grab the puck and throw it out of the zone. And Quick is really, Jonathan Quick to me has been the real X factor as far as the defense in this series, which is that the Devils were used to playing goaltenders in the previous 2 rounds that either couldn't play the puck or just didn't in the case of Henrik Lundqvist. And Quick is like a third defenseman back there. It's almost like the Devils are playing a mirror of themselves the way that Brodeur handles the puck. And that kid's just not let them get anything going in the offensive zone.
Yeah, and he's been locked in for basically this entire postseason. And it's gotten to the point where even when somebody, could be right in front of the net, pick up some loose puck like what happened last night, and all of a sudden you have like this mini breakaway at warp speed, and you just assume Quick's going to stop it. Like it's almost like to score on him, you need the deflection, or he needs to not be able to see the puck, or sometimes goalies just get in that zone, man, and you can't really describe it, but when you see it, it kind of makes sense.
Well, that's
it feels like it's there.
Yeah, and that's why hockey, the Stanley Cup playoffs are so awesome, because the goaltending is the great equalizer. You could be a terrible team playing a juggernaut from the regular season, but if your guy just decides he's not going to let anything through, you're probably going to win the series, and that's why you see so many upsets in the first round. In Quick's case, there was a play in Game 3 where Ryan Carter of the Devils had the puck on the side of the net and kind of deflects it in or tries to lift the puck, and Quick's not even looking, and it just goes off his blocker and then goes up and over the net. And it was at that point that I said, I would like to collect the blood sample from Jonathan Quick to get an exact count of his midi-chlorians to find out exactly what kind of Jedi we're dealing with here, because this guy, he's got a force field up in this series on some of these chances the Devils have.
And with that said, and the hot goalie, blah, 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 the Kings are playing out of their minds as an entire team. And as somebody who watched them play the whole year, you know, I know there are two different seasons in hockey, but it just makes no sense. The thing I've been the most surprised by, Drew Doughty.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that I was watching it during the season, they'd just given him this big contract, going to games and asking the people around him, like, is this guy overrated? Like, what's going on here? And, you know, by game 2 of the finals, I think one of the announcers was talking about, this guy's a combination between Dennis Potvin and Ray Bourque. I was like, whoa! It was an actual quote. It was somebody who was paid to talk about hockey for a living said that, and nobody else disagreed with him or was like, well, that's a little strong. You don't want to throw him in there. You know, I don't know how. Did you think he was capable of this?
Well, first off, as hockey writers, hyperbole is our currency. So
Okay,
really,
good.
it's completely accepted that somebody would say that. Secondly, I've always had an affinity for Drew Doughty because, one, he was a fat kid. So I can relate because I was a fat kid. And two, he grew up with a Los Angeles Kings garbage pail in his room. And so when he was drafted by the Kings, it was like a big deal. He's like, wow, this is the team that I grew up liking, and now I'm playing for him. So it's got to be kind of a kick for him to be a pretty important cog in this machine and trying to get them their first cup. But, you know, the full marks here, I think, have to go to Darryl Sutter, the coach who came in midway through the season, replaced Terry Murray, and has led this team on a ridiculous run since he got hired. Because I think I remember reading Doughty saying this, I think, you know, Sutter's a guy who is going to be hard on you if you don't perform. But he's also a guy that's going to pump your tires a little bit if you do. And to look at the way that guys like Doughty and Penner have played under Sutter versus how they played under Murray, you can kind of see that change in tone, that change in approach by the coach, I think has really kind of helped these guys along. And he scored a goal in Game 2 that was remarkable, like just a remarkable goal. Like if the majority of TV news producers around the United States, if they knew a lick about hockey, that would have been the highlight of the night. And for a Devils fan, it was disturbing to watch because the one thing I know from this series is that it's complete comeuppance and complete revenge for what the Devils did to the Detroit Red Wings in 1995. It's every Devils fan watching this series is right now feeling terrible about the way that we treated Red Wings fans in '95 because now we're getting it. You know, we can't do anything against their goaltender. They're winning the first 2 games on the road. Game 3 is a blowout. Defenseman, in the Devils' case, Scott Niedermayer, in the Kings' case, Drew Doughty, scores ridiculous end-to-end goal in Game 2. It's a mirror image of what happened in 1995. And so I did go on Twitter last night and apologize to all of my Detroit readers because I feel like now I've really had sort of an Ebenezer Scrooge moment here where the ghost of hockey past has visited me in the visage of the LA Kings.
That's interesting. So Doughty is Niedermayer, Quick is Brodeur. So who is Kopitar?
Well, Devils didn't really. I mean, maybe you could say Kopitar. See, Dustin Brown's Claude Lemieux. I think that's the easy parallel to make. I don't know if the Devils necessarily had a Kopitar. Like they had Neil Broughton, but he was sort of like towards the end of his career. But Brown is definitely Claude Lemieux, and of course the Trevor Lewis Dwight King line that produced a goal in Game 3 and has done really well all postseason is the Crash line. Bobby Holik, Mike Peluso, Randy McKay. There's a lot of parallels you could draw. I mean, old school coach coming in, all that stuff, and at the end of the day, the Kings' legacy in this playoff at the end of the day is going to be one, this machine-like attack that they had, almost infallible, probably going to finish the postseason with like 2 losses. The fact that they couldn't be beaten on the road, but the fact that every single team they played comes away from that series thinking not that we were dominated, but you're just scratching your head saying, how do we not get a thing off these guys?
Yeah.
The Devils are could finish this series, could finish the Stanley Cup Final without having scored a clean goal against the LA Kings. That's a special kind of domination.
Yeah, and you talk about like the big 3 that the Kings have. You know better than I do. Those have to be 3 of the best 20 players in the league at this point, right? And I don't think you would have said that as recently as 5 weeks ago, but now the thing for me, because Kopitar is my daughter's favorite player, and it's just, I've always been kind of watching him and monitoring him. he's the aggressiveness that he's been playing with in the playoffs was always the fault with him. It's like, he's a little soft. Man, I wish he would come out and really attack these guys. Now, last night he was outstanding. That might have been the second best game I've seen him play. Are those three in the top 20 now? Would you put them in there?
I think so. I think they've played their way in there, and obviously the playoffs changes perceptions on a lot of things. I mean, when there were rumors that he was going to be traded, Dustin Brown was kind of getting elevated into elite power forward status in the NHL, and there was a pushback on that. But I mean, you watch the way that this guy has played in the postseason. He's one of those few power forwards in the league, and I'd throw Shane Doan in that mix. One season, Brendan Morrow from the Dallas Stars was in that mix. One of these power forwards that's just able to take over games offensively, physically, and also with that sort of agitation thing that he does so well. So I think in that instance he's kind of raised his game to elite status in the postseason. Kopitar is awesome. Kopitar, for a lot of people, and by that I mean us East Coast bias types, was the tinted visor, funny first name, kind of looks like a werewolf guy. But I think that this cat has become now a premier offensive player in this league, and sometimes all it takes is the right line combination. And there's been no question that his line with Brown and Williams has been the best in the postseason. And you look at the goal they scored in Game 3, and it's just magician-like. I mean, it was just perfect.
Yeah, my friend Lewis, who's the only diehard Kings fan that I know, we saw him between periods, and he was just giddy. He was like, that was like Russian Olympics. That was like a Russian Olympics mid-'80s goal. I was like, all right, settle down. But it really was. It was certainly not the type of goal that the Kings were scoring. This was a team, 1-0 games, 2-1 games, just constantly for the whole year. The other thing, just looking at the playoffs as a whole, and as I continue to try to figure out what the hell is happening here, I can't remember a team that won more like one goal games, or like the games were just like they're trying to hold on at the end, but it never felt like the Kings were holding on. Like you always have in these playoff games, the other team is, they're pressing, they're flying around, that hit the post. And with the Kings, it was like even in the last 2 minutes of these games, they were in control.
Right.
Which was weird. And, I never felt like it was like a seat of the pants type of thing.
And it's just the difference between winning close games and not losing close games, right? I mean, you look at the first two games of the series in the overtime. There were some desperate moments, a little bit here and there, with some devil's chances that they just got because they were on home ice, they were pumped up, what have you. But the Kings never looked like they were rattled by any of this stuff. They never looked rattled. They always look. The confidence that they're playing with right now is unparalleled in the sense that maybe it's because we've not seen how they react to a scare because no one's put a scare in them. But they're unflappable right now, and that comes from the goaltender. Quick had an average game in Game 1. I actually think his stick handling was subpar in that game. He created more offensive chances for the Devils than the Devils created for themselves. But even then, it was like no panic, no nothing. It wasn't like all of a sudden the world's writing about how Ilya Bryzgalov is shaky. They're never going to write that about Quick because just Quick is such the backbone for that team. In every facet of the game, and especially on the penalty kill, where the Kings have just demolished the Devils. I mean, the Devils' power play in the series has been quiet, pathetic, momentum sapping, whatever you want to call it, and that all tracks back to how good Quick is between the pipes, where these guys are able to come out, be aggressive, attack the guys on the point for the Devils, and know that their goaltender is going to stop everything he sees.
The only time I really felt like the Kings were rattled, and I've watched most of these games. I went to every home game and probably watched 70% of the road games. The only time I felt like they were a little rattled was Game 4 against Vancouver, which I attended. And the reason was Vancouver was a really good team, and for whatever reason, the Kings took the lead in that series. But there was a moment in that Game 4 when, the Sedins were back, and it just was like, here comes Vancouver. If there's ever a team that was going to come back from 3-0, it's this team. And people left the building. They were a little frightened.
Yeah, and that was before we realized that the LA Kings didn't know how to lose on the road. No one knew that they were going to go back to Vancouver and do what they did. But it's a good point because with Sedin coming back, now all of a sudden you're saying to yourself, okay, the fully armed and operational battle station that is the Vancouver Canucks are going to come out now and be the Canucks. Yeah. But lo and behold, the Kings just subverted that in the next game. But they've had very few. The first two rounds they were fortunate. Sedin being out was a huge break. Peter Angelo for the St. Louis Blues getting hurt in Game 1 was a huge break. And even in the final here, I mean, Kovalchuk, if you watch him, he's had a back injury since the Florida series. He's been able to fight through it and actually was leading the playoffs in scoring entering the final, but he's an empty shell. I mean, to the point where he was a liability skating with Zach Parise on their top line in Game 3, and so they might have even caught another break there, but by no means should that be an excuse. I mean, the Devils had enough offensive weapons firing for them in that Rangers series where they should have been able to get something against the Kings in the first two games, and they just couldn't.
I was going to ask you about Kovalchuk because I was surprised by how disengaged he was, and even like on the power play, he was just kind of hanging out a little bit, and I couldn't decide whether he was just being lazy or whether he was injured. But then I did some research, and it turns out, yeah, he's probably still playing. I mean, what is he, like 50% at this point?
I don't even know what he is. It was a back injury. I forget if it was a herniated disc or something. I mean, it's some kind of a back ailment, and you can always tell when he's hurt because he doesn't have any velocity in his skating, and he doesn't shoot as much. He's always kind of like softly tossing these passes because he's got such great hands to his teammates, and that's why he looks disengaged, because he's not being aggressive on the puck. And on the power play, that's killed him. I mean, to not have that weapon out there firing for you on the power play is going to completely undermine everything you want to do. A lot of his points that he scored in the playoffs were on the power play, and it's one of the reasons why. I mean, Game 3 is anybody's game if they wind up scoring on that 5-on-3. But just like the previous games in the series, they get nothing on the power play and they lose momentum, and then lo and behold, the Kings pull it out in the end.
And that's the thing, like, as the Kings have proven, home ice in hockey can kind of come and go. But there are moments in a game where the crowd can really get into it and get to a point where it really does feel like the crowd is affecting the game. And it seems like when you kill a 5-on-3, that delights the crowd more than just about anything short of a goal.
It is, because of the insurmountable odds that you feel like you're fighting. The fact that when you watch a 5-on-3, it's almost like one team is toying with your defense, getting every shot that they want. To me, if you get a 5-on-3, their penalties are so rare in the playoffs that if you get a 5-on-3 power play and you don't convert, you might as well just kiss the win goodbye. Just put it in an envelope, mail it to the other team, because those chances don't come around. And especially in a series in which you can't get anything past the opposing goaltender, to not score on a 5-on-3 is just a devastating thing.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive. It was, other than the Kopitar Russian Olympic goal, it was the best moment of the game.
Hey, so what'd you think of Gretzky coming back last night, by the way?
I gotta say, it wasn't as gigantic of a deal as I thought it was going to be, just from the crowd response, but still was kind of awesome. Like, I'm there with my daughter, and she's like, "Who's that?" I'm like, "Oh, that's the greatest hockey player who's ever played."
Yeah, I mean,
he's right over there.
I'm with you, man. Like, I was watching on TV, so I wasn't there to get the full crowd reaction. But here's the greatest hockey player that ever played, and the guy who basically he was the spark of life for hockey in California. Yeah. And it was his first time coming back in a bit, I think, too. And I was sort of surprised that there wasn't this momentous standing ovation, roaring crowd for 20 seconds kind of thing that happened. But that might just be by virtue of the fact that, the Kings are up 2-0. Let's just get on with the game and get rolling here.
I thought about that as it was happening. And some of the people in my section have been going for a long, since the 1980s. So they appreciate the moment with its proper perspective. But I do feel like a lot of the people who may have been at that game might have been people that didn't really totally, recall the 93 thing. I don't know. I thought same as you. Like, if that's basketball and Bird comes out for a Celtics game, it's a minute.
Right.
It's a minute at least. Or I don't know. What's interesting is the biggest ovation. They've been doing this thing with the video before the game, which I don't think they show on TV. Where I forget who the band that does the song, but it starts out with the childhood photos of the Kings, and then it goes. God, I wish I could remember the name of the band.
I've seen the video. I've seen the video too. I saw it online, and I forget what band it is, but it's awesome with the kids' photos. It's awesome.
My Morning Jacket, maybe. I can't remember, but it goes through, and then the crowd. It's become part of the playoffs, like this video, and then Pia Toscano, ironically, comes out and sings the national anthem, but she's been killing it, the American Idol. Mm-hmm. So I think everybody was excited that they kept Pia Toscano for Game 3 of the Finals, because she'd been kind of the good luck charm for most of the playoff run. But part of me wonders if the crowd was just kind of winded from cheering when Gretzky came out.
It's possible. possible.
And also, he's a Phoenix guy, kind of. I mean, maybe it's the Phoenix ties because they don't like the Phoenix team that much.
Oh, well, yeah. They should like. I mean, he's got ties to Phoenix, but he's not exactly a Phoenix guy anymore. They owe him like $8 million from.
Well, but I mean, he came in. He was with another team. You know, maybe they held a grudge. I thought it was weird too because it was Al Michaels got a comparably big jumbotron ovation.
Yeah, I think Al Michaels, Simone Gagne's participation in the game got a bigger cheer than Gretzky.
Hey, I wanted to ask you about Brodeur because, you know, he's sitting there. He's 10 feet away before the game, and I'm pointing at my daughter, and she's, you know, she wants to know what we're going to yell at him, and I'm saying, like, that guy's probably the greatest goaltender of all time, and he's dad's age. And she's like, what? He's your age? Like, she was just totally flustered by that. So then she was working on yelling at him, like, you're as old as my dad, and stupid things like that. But is he the greatest goaltender of all time?
For my money, Dominik Hasek's still the best goaltender of all time. He obviously doesn't have the cups that a guy like Waugh or Brodeur has, but I have never seen another goaltender that athletically could do what Hasek did, and do it in a way that, you know, flopping around like the fish at the end of the Faith No More video and making saves left and right and then not getting out of position doing it. He was a freak of nature, and any player that you can say was a freak of nature and also has the, you know, postseason hardware to back it up, I think it has to be considered the best. I would put the eternal struggle, I think, for hockey fans is Waugh versus Brodeur, just because of the styles, the accolades, the fact that they dominated their generations. You know, I will say Brodeur because, I mean,
you're a Devils fan.
Yeah, because I'm a homer, but also because I feel like Brodeur gets a bad rap because of the teams he played for and because of the defensemen that played in front of him. Like, you look at Brodeur's numbers, and the first thing that anybody's out of anybody's mouth is the trap. Then they talk about Scott Stevens and Niedermeyer and Brian Rafalski, the players that played in front of him. But my argument about Brodeur and the systems that he's played in has always been the West Coast offense argument, which is that you can't put anybody in the West Coast offense and expect the same results you got out of Joe Montana. You can't put anybody in the system the Devils played and expect to get the same results you got from Marty Brodeur, because Brodeur is a unique individual. He handles the puck like a defenseman. He's the best stick-handling goaltender of all time. He's a guy who mentally can prepare himself to face 14 shots a game and not flub one. I mean, he was the perfect goaltender for that system, and it's the reason that it thrived. And I feel like that should be celebrated rather than being a strike against his record, but there's no way you're ever going to convince a Patrick Waugh backer that that's the case.
So is it safe to say maybe it's a Mount Rushmore? He's on it, Rua's on it, Hasek's on it, and then Dryden?
Well, if you were to go modern era, probably Dryden. You know,
because he's most successful.
You'll have your Billy Smith people. You'll have a number of others. I mean,
you know, my friend Hershey is one of those Billy Smith people, and he's like crazy about it. He thinks Billy Smith's like the most underrated athlete in any professional sport.
My dad's the same way, but I think it's because my dad was an Islander fan before he converted to being a Devils fan because of me. And he used to extol the virtues of Billy Smith, and that's because Billy Smith was a dirty player. Like, on top of being a fantastic goaltender, he was a dirty player, so that makes him, like, extra endearing to people. It's the same reason people go, you know, head over heels for Cam Neely or Wendell Clark. Like, if you're a great player with an edge to you, then you just fall in love with these guys. And I think Billy Smith and Ron Hextall are both in that category.
Yeah, I remember a lot of those Billy Smith chops. I mean, people say that Mike Smith is cheap now. He had nothing on Billy Smith. You know, if the Kings pull this off tomorrow, I don't want to jinx it. It's a 44-year drought. So you have the Maple Leafs left, you have the Canucks left. Are those the final two in terms of droughts, or would you throw the Capitals in there even though they haven't been around as long?
Yeah, I think it depends on what you consider droughts, right? Like, is a drought you've never won, or is a drought you've won and not won for a really long time? Because you do have a team like the Capitals that's never won, so that's a pretty significant drought. I mean, it'd be the Leafs, I think, would be the one that you're looking at, and then you have a team like Vancouver that's never won. So you kind of try to figure out exactly how to measure these things. But, you know, it's interesting. Chicago and Philly, when they played 2 years ago, the narrative from that series was, here are two storied franchises that haven't won in decades. And Boston had a certain bit of that, too. I have not seen that narrative catch on for LA Kings fans, that this is going to be their first cup, that this is long-suffering. And I'm wondering if it's because there's a bias against Los Angeles as a sports town where every time we turn on the TV, the Lakers are having a parade, and that just doesn't jibe with being a long-suffering fan base.
Yeah, and I sit around some of them, and what's amazing to me, couple things. First of all, they had such bad luck with the Clippers and the Lakers getting to the second round like they did, because it's a Lakers city. It just is. And as long as the Lakers are involved, they're going to get the lion's share of the credit. So as long as that kind of dragged along, they were kind of pushed to the back burner.
Right.
The other thing, there's been so little history for the Kings. Like, at least the Maple Leafs, they're such a famous franchise for Toronto. You know, they're like the Red Sox were to Boston before the Red Sox won. It's the same kind of dynamic. And in LA, it's like, you know, they're the third or fourth most popular team in town at all times.
Mm-hmm.
But then on top of that, they really only have like 2 or 3 quote unquote eras. You know, they have like the Marcel Dion, Rogie Vachon era. And then they had that one Gretzky run, which Gretzky was here a lot longer than people remember. They really only had that one great year.
Right.
And then other than that, like they made the second round in like 2001. They've made the second round in 12 years. So when you don't have any real history, it's tough for people to talk about how long suffering you are. It's almost like they've been anonymous, which is worse. You know?
Yeah, no, and you know, part of that history too is almost like a borrowed history. I mean, the Gretzky trade was kind of like, here's the Edmonton legacy traveling down to Los Angeles, because all of a sudden McSorley's there and Yari Curry and all those cats from the Oilers team. So there's a sense of that too, I think. But who knows? You know, I think one of the things that's going to come out of this cup, because listen, I ain't delusional. I'd love if the Devils pulled off history, but they're not. Yeah. And I will gladly come back and eat crow, having made that prediction. One of the things I think is going to come out of this Cup victory is the notion that we could be seeing something a little bit long-term here for Los Angeles.
I was going to ask you about that, because this really is like the secret storyline here.
Dynasties are always contingent on supporting cast. So you think about the way Chicago won a few years ago. Their supporting cast completely turned over the following year because of their poor cap management, and then they didn't get back. If you look at the Kings, their core is going to be locked up for a bit. I mean, obviously, Richards and Carter are signed until the sun explodes with those contracts that Philly gave them. They'll give Quick a long-term deal. Doughty signed for a long time. Brown will be here. Like Kopitar, they're going to have guys that are going to be here for a while, and then it's just a matter of whether or not you can either retain the supporting cast or find the same kind of lightning in the bottle with some of these guys, like, you know, the Fraziers and the Lewises of the world that you found this season. Because from a core perspective, unless things get all screwy in the next CBA as far as what the cap is, they should be able to keep this group together for a bit.
And they're going to have their big three, which is the important thing. They'll have they know they're going to have Kopitar, Doughty, and Quick together for the next couple years, which is the single most important part of this.
You'd think so. I mean, they still got to sign Quick. I mean, he's going to be a free agent, coming up. So it's one of those situations where you got to see what the market is. You got to see what the agents look like. You never know.
Come on, stop it.
You never know.
Stop it. And then after that, I mean, they've done a nice job of kind of weaving in the young guys. You know, I think Penner, when I did the podcast with him, he could kind of see the writing on the wall, I think. He knows they have Dwight King. He's a younger, cheaper version of Penner.
Yeah.
And, you know, once you can weave the young guys in, I'd love to see them bring Penner back. And I actually think he's been really good in the playoffs. But, you know, realistically, they don't need to. They can replace him with
and that's and to be honest with you, that's the kind of guy I wouldn't bring back. Like, that's the kind of guy that, to me, was the perfect guy at the perfect time for this team.
Yep.
You know, kind of getting, reclaiming his reputation after being sort of a bust with that trade and the pancakes thing and the whole bit. Like, everything kind of came together for that guy, and occasionally you got to make the tough decision and let him go and make his money elsewhere versus bringing him back. But I mean, at the same time, you got to imagine he'd like to come back. He's been one of the revelations of the postseason as far as like how ridiculously funny this guy is, and self-deprecating about the weight thing and all that other stuff. He's been a real, and he's got probably the best playoff beard still in the playoffs. Maybe Andy Green of the Devils gives him a run, but Penner's beard is remarkable. You know,
I've been meaning to tell you this. I think Richards is doctoring his beard. His beard all of a sudden looks Penner-esque, and I don't totally remember when it blossomed from what it was to what it is now. I think there's some foul play.
There is, and that is hockey's dirty little secret. Is that there's two dirty little secrets about playoff beards. Well, three if you count the fact that now that they're corporatized, they're not fun anymore. There's the notion that these guys start growing their beards before the playoffs, and I think Shea Weber, God love him for the King Leonidas beard that he's able to sprout, I think has been guilty of starting a little early. And then there is performance enhancement. There is, hair just for men hair products and hair coloring and all sorts of stuff to fill out the beard. Now, usually these are the tools implemented by younger players. But I would imagine that if you're a veteran player and you're in the Stanley Cup Final and you see that your foliage is not up to snuff, or you're bunking next to a guy who has got a full shrubbery on his face, then you must do something to kind of catch up.
And yeah, I mean, it would be a little controversial if there was a little scrum and somebody's partial beard toupee got ripped off or something.
Or somebody walks past your locker in the dressing room and you see a can of the Ron Popeil stuff up there.
While I have you on the phone, since you're one of the ambassadors of hockey, especially online, I wanted to thank the sport of hockey for, especially this year with the NBA, the officiating has just been so frustrating. And, it's so rare to watch an NBA playoff game and feel like you didn't notice the officials or that one call didn't screw something up or whatever. I think the hockey officiating is really good. And maybe I'm not looking hard enough, but compared to what it was like from when I was growing up and even in the late 80s and early 90s, like it seems like whatever they're doing is working. Would you agree with this?
In some cases, yes. I think these playoffs have had a few games where things got away from them, especially in that Philly-Pittsburgh series.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I think that there is. I mean, the obstruction and the hooking and the holding and that kind of thing have gotten to the point where they actually discussed it at their meetings during the finals, the GMs, where they're going to have maybe like a forum on it later this summer to talk about where the rules are and whether they have to get more strict with the enforcement. I do think there's been a little too much obstruction in the playoffs, just as far as interference and stuff like that that's been uncalled. But those are tough calls to make. I mean, those are all often seen as ticky-tacky cheap calls, and you just don't want to see that kind of thing in the playoffs. I would say overall they've done a good job, but there are some instances where I think that they've really fallen down, like some of the goaltender interference stuff, where like anytime Dustin Brown looks at a goaltender now, he's going to be sitting in the penalty box, and some of that's stuff that could be corrected, because I think that's a symptom from the regular season when Ryan Miller got run over by Milan Lucic.
Yeah.
I think that's all a trickle down from that. Where
he deserved it.
Yeah, like potentially for being so far out of his crease, and obviously Lucic said he didn't see him, so that exonerates him. But I think that's a trickle down from the regular season, and maybe you just need to kind of course correct that in the summer. Yeah, the real controversy was the Department of Player Safety and Brendan Shanahan and some of the decisions that they made. I mean, suspending Rafi Torres for 25 playoff games or whatever it was going to be was egregious, and the suspension on Andrew Shaw for running into Mike Smith I thought was egregious. And then you had the thing that I think to this day Shanahan and that department regret, where Shea Weber took Zetterberg's head and slammed it into the glass at the end of the game, and there was no recourse for it other than a fine.
That was insane.
That's the one they whiffed on, and they know they whiffed on it, and I think that was a real point of controversy and rightful indignation from hockey fans about it not being called.
The reason I brought it up was I thought yesterday was a poorly officiated game, and it was the first time I remember going to a game during this playoff run and really feeling like the refs didn't do a great job. So it made me think like, maybe I haven't been appreciating the refs enough here.
My radio partner, Jeff Merrick, and I always debate about the concept of game management by referees. He likes it. He likes the idea that, referees kind of give you one and then give me one and kind of keep people in line. And I'm never a fan of officials kind of crafting a narrative in their mind as to what should happen at some point in the game. Like, these guys are down. They need help. Here's a power play. And I feel like that happens in hockey a lot. And last night was a good example of it. Brodeur looked like he froze the puck under his pad. It looked like the whistle should have been blown. And then the Kings score the goal. He goes nuts. He starts yelling at Dan O'Halloran. And then what happens? And in the next maybe like 8 minutes, the Devils get 2 power plays out of it. So to me, it felt like a give back. And anytime it feels like there's a give back, anytime it feels like the officials are covering up for a mistake or trying to even the score, there's a counterfeit nature to this officiating, and it kind of doesn't sit well with hockey fans.
All right. Yeah, I'm most disappointed. My daughter and I love the Giant referee. You must have done posts on the Giant referee, right?
We've not done posts on the
Or the
Giant referee,
official.
but I know of
linesman or a referee? You know
he's
what
a
I'm talking
linesman.
about, right?
He's a linesman. He's
like 6'8".
humongous, completely humongous. Yeah.
He's like Chara size.
He is. When he raises his hand for an offside, he can touch the banners. It's ridiculous.
He's unbelievable. I want to do a 30 for 30 short about him. He's like 8 inches taller than any other linesman or official.
Oh, hey, by the way, I was thrilled to hear that 30 for 30 is coming back.
Yep.
Are you going to get around to doing your 30 for 30 on the neutral zone trap? We talked about that before the last batch of them.
Yeah, that got rejected the last time around.
Oh, shit. You need to just repackage it somehow, right?
I think we have a couple hockey ones in store that I think are better.
Can you do maybe the neutral zone trap and its influence on Kate Upton? Like, is there any way to kind of work it that way?
The best thing about the Devil's neutral zone trap was the title, which was going to be Trapped with an exclamation point. Because then it's like the double entendre, but the NHL was also trapped by this horrible style of play that was threatening to bring it down. But after that, it kind of fell apart because then you had to watch an hour on it. It'll be interesting to see how many years does your goalie have left?
Marty's probably got one more year, you figure, left. I mean, I think but I was one of these guys that thought he was cooked and didn't want him back at all next year. Move on. Next era, whatever, but it's hard to tell a guy no when he gives you this kind of effort in the postseason, and at least shows you that he's going to be able to come back and be a competent goaltender in the regular season. I mean, there were times this year where he looked like he was done, but he looks so good in playoffs. It's hard to imagine him not being here.
All right, Greg, as always, a pleasure. I'm glad you seem to be in decent spirits about this whole thing.
Shell-shocked, I think is the term you were looking for.
Shell-shocked. All right. Well, that would be nice. Anyway, good talking to you. We'll read you on the Yahoo Puck Daddy blog. One of my favorite stops. Great job with that.
Thanks.
All right, thanks. And I don't know if you missed it, but on Friday, the Mets threw the first no-hitter in the history of the Mets franchise, which was one of my favorite streaks in sports. It really was. It was one of the best random streaks in sports. And just as I always thought the Mets fans reacted like they won the World Series, which, Cousin Sal, you realize you didn't win the World Series on Friday night, right?
No, even better. What are you talking about? I got to tell you, I know it's going to sound stupid. I know I'm going to get a lot of crap for this, but I liken it to the birth of a child in that I feel like my wife has been pregnant for 50 years, for like 600 months.
Yeah.
And, unlike a World Series title, that's scheduled. That's the end of October, so, all right, you have to tune in. But a no-hitter that never happens, it's just there's so many false alarms. And it's like, all right, do I take it to the hospital now? Like, last time we did this, someone got a hit and a double in the eighth, and it really was that's the only way I compare it to a birth. But it was weird like that. It really was strange. You just didn't want to miss it,
Did you honestly ever think it was going to happen? Because I had reached a point just from knowing you and my buddy Gus and some other Mets fans where when it got to the fifth or sixth inning, the excitement level for it and also like that feeling of, we're going to screw this up somehow. It just seemed like that combination was just deadly and that it was going to sink any potential no-hitters. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so negative all the time anyway. And it just, I didn't think it was going to happen. And I really didn't even think it was going to happen until there were like 2 out in the eighth. And,
yeah.
Because, when we talk about so many things, what you don't think about is people overreacting, like players overreacting. And like, I credit like our shortstop, Omar Quintanilla, more than anyone, like for not screwing it up. Like there was a play in the seventh, I think he was running out and Neuenhuis was coming in, he was calling him off the ball and they easily could have collided. And then like Beltran had a big at bat in the eighth and like he could have collided with Murphy at second and he didn't. It was like guys just like, they did everything right. It was amazing. I was so excited to have this off my back.
I learned this lesson in 2004. I had an epiphany. I may have even written about it, I don't remember, but with the Red Sox where you forget sometimes that even though you've been rooting for the team for 40 years, most of the guys on the team either A, have only been on the team for 2 months or a year or 2 years, B, barely speak English.
Right.
and C, could care less and don't read the newspapers. So, when the Red Sox, when they turned things around, and we were so as a fan base in disbelief, but the players themselves, like, they don't care what happened in 1967.
Right, exactly.
I know Johan wanted to pitch the first no-hitter, but at the same time, I know he's not on the mound going, oh man, it's 2 outs in the 8th. This is just like that situation with Nolan Ryan. Like, he's not thinking that. He's trying to get outs.
Yeah, and I was thinking that too. I was like, you know what? When it does happen, if it does happen, it's just going to be a bunch of 20-something-year-olds, a few of them just called up from AAA who don't really care. But I really got the feeling. I look at R.A. Dickey in the dugout, like, biting a towel, and like I said, like, outfielders calling each other off, like, screaming, like, Baxter's catch at the wall. It really looked like they played. It was probably just in my imagination, but it looked like they played with such purpose,
Yeah.
And I was happy because, like, no-hitters could go, like, there's one end and there's the other. I didn't want it to be like Dylan G, Bobby Parnell, and Tim Burdick combined on a 3-man no-hitter, in an interleague game in Toronto on a Tuesday afternoon that's buried, Like,
right.
That would be the worst. But the best, I think, is sort of what happened. Like, Santana, our ace, puts an Iron Man performance together, 134 pitches on a Friday night at Citi Field, and I really couldn't ask for any more, except for where I was. I was at a Round Table Pizza checking the scores, and then finally, thank God for MLB TV, I caught it live streaming. But very exciting.
When the first Red Sox no-hitter of my lifetime happened, I've told this story before, but it was Hideo Nomo, and it was like the first week of the season, and we had just gotten him.
Yeah.
And it was just, the whole thing was weird, because I'd watched Red Sox games my whole life, and the drill. Once it gets past, like, the 4th inning and you see the zeros, you just start thinking about it. And it was just so strange that it was Nomo just that early in the season. There's a lot, other sports going on, and I knew nothing about the guy, and he barely spoke English, and it was just a weird guy to do it, and it was a little dissatisfying. And then Derek Lowe pitched one, I think, maybe a year later or something, but it was a home game. It was a Saturday afternoon. It was just, that felt like the best Red Sox no-hitter. That felt like the right one. And
well, listen, I mean, you're one of the true racists in sports. I mean, there's nothing. That's
Stop
we're not
it.
learning anything new here. I know
Stop
what you're
it.
saying.
I'm saying that one, that Lowe did it in Fenway. He was pitching well. Everybody liked him. He was a guy who had been on the Red Sox for a while. Like, that was kind of how that Santana thing played out, where you had this, the best possible pitcher to do it on the best possible night, a Friday night. During a season that it's actually a pretty likable Mets team that has a little juvenation.
Yeah,
and
it gives them a little juice heading into the weekend, and they 2 more big games against the Cardinals before yesterday. Yeah, sure.
The stars aligned. It was perfect.
They really did. Now, the downside to it is, of course, like, all the people just want to get you crazy and talk about that there was a hit. And I gotta, I'm just going to say this once and then probably a million times after, but, umpires call balls and strikes. And as far as Beltran's hit on the line, that it was called foul, like, I just think it's a judgment game, and it's a split-second call. And if we get a break every 51 years, so be it. And if you're going to yell at me because 3 specks of chalk kicked up from the outfield, you could go to hell. That's all I'm saying.
The best part about this is, having known you now for 10 years, if this had happened to any other team, you would have taken such delight in the asterisk hit and the chalk, and how do you feel good about that? That was a hit. You would have played all of those buttons, and I'm not even pushing them. In my opinion, you're right. It's part of the game. Umpire made a mistake, and he still had to get how many outs after that? 11? 10?
Yeah, he still had to get through 2 full innings, and plus that inning. Yeah.
Well, the other funny thing that came out of this, not funny, but just classic if you know Mets fans, is Mets fans always, even when they're happy, the Mets fans are still waiting to get kicked in the teeth. And Johan going over 130 pitches and that whole thing, should he come in, should he come out? It's just, I know the Mets fans just in the back of their minds are thinking, oh my God, I hope this isn't really going to lead to something bad down the road here. Right?
Oh, you just with Johans pitching?
No, with his arm. Yeah, with his wing.
Of course I don't want him to be hurt, but I tweeted it. I said, this guy can give up a 500-foot home run to any batter he faces while in a Met uniform for the rest of the time, and I think I'll be okay with it. I really do.
Yeah.
But that was obviously reactionary. But yeah, they're resting him an extra day to face the Yankees this weekend, and you can only really hope for the best.
Do you think that? Do you think another theory about this? Because it did seem like I expected the Mets fans to react the way they did, but it was even about 13% more joyous than I thought it was going to be. And my thought here was, you really haven't had anything good happen with the Mets since the Piazza World Series. So it's been 12 years. You have all these Mets fans especially who are in your age range and a little bit, maybe like about 10 years swing down, who either were there for 86 or vaguely remember 86, and then now it gets to 2000, things turn. Now it's been a full decade. You have kids. You have these tortured kids who don't realize why they became Mets fans. The team never wins. It was like the first good thing that had happened in this generation for the Mets.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And, I'll give you an analogy. This morning, Jimmy Kimmel Live was nominated for a Critics' Choice Award, which not probably one of the top 10 or 7 awards, in the business, but we're excited. We haven't gotten anything before that. So we're going to have a party. We're going to have coffee trucks and all sorts of things in the back parking lot today. So, yeah, you hang on to good news. That's what happens. I think that's the spirit, really.
I'm really fired up about this Critics' Choice Award. What channel is this on?
Oh, I don't think it's a channel. Is it
come
on
on.
a channel?
Did they show it? Is there a host?
It's on a Monday night. I know, like June 16th. Is that a Monday? But
well, whatever, man. It's fun to win awards. That's great.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean, man. We're doing good.
So this Mets thing, it was just a taste of something good to happen. Now, I mean, you don't think this team can actually be that one baseball team that seems to happen every year that just looks terrible on paper, nobody expects anything, and somehow they're in the mix with a week to go.
Well, I think a week to go. The key word is weak. I don't think the National League is that strong. I think, the Dodgers, who seem like the powerhouse, are falling apart now, and still no one's contending in that division. The Cardinals had the best hitting in the National League. They seem to fall apart. They're barely above 500. It really is our division, like the NL East, and I'm afraid of the Nationals the most, believe it or not. But I do think we can compete. I really think we could be there in September.
I don't blame you for being afraid of the Nationals.
Yeah. Well, what's not to like about that team?
I guess, maybe you'd say Strasburg. I don't know how they've managed his innings, but these teams that rely at least partially on these rookie pitchers, you just never know. All of a sudden they have to be shut down, and then what do you do?
Right.
I have to admit, I haven't really followed it, though, because I like to live my life pretending that there's only one league, and it's called the American League.
I know you do. But and then when we beat you in the World Series the last couple of years, you're like,
then I get mad. Yeah, then I'm like, what was this quadruple A again? They're doing this. So right now the Mets.
Turkey beat the U.S. basketball team. Where did that come from?
So right now, every team in the NL East is either 500 or better. The Mets are a half game behind Washington and Miami. What was the Mets over-under before the year? Wasn't it like 70? It was some really low number, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was like 70.5 or 71. No, I'm sorry. I think it might have been a little more than that. It might have been like 73 or something.
Like 75?
Yeah.
So potentially, if this played out in a really crazy way, we could have the Mets and the Dodgers in the playoffs. That would be pretty interesting. A little 88 flashback.
Very exciting. Well, it happened a few years ago, too. I was at the games, and the Mets...
Oh, the Manny. That's right, Mannywood.
Yeah. They actually moved in LA here, but...
Yeah. It's It's funny they were finally able to replace the Mannywood billboards with Kings billboards over the last couple weeks. It was
You like that, huh?
finally a new bandwagon for everyone to jump on. It is unbelievable. I mean, you know, you always hear about LA and you know that's the rap on LA fans, and the Kings have great fans, you know, but they have their hardcore base and people who either love the Kings or have no opinion whatsoever. And now you're seeing the jerseys and the sweatshirts and the flags in the cars. Kings flags in the cars?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Oh
It's
my
a little
God.
much. It's a little much. Lindsay Lohan crashed the Zamboni the other day. There's a lot going on. I don't know. I don't know what to think of it. But what we didn't do, as bandwagon as we should have been, how did we not put the Kings on any of our parlays to win anything? We make 65 parlays a week, and like we have nothing to play for here.
When I was in Vegas in like I guess it was the end of March, I bet on the Kings for my daughter. Suddenly a diehard Kings fan. They were 15-1 odds. Put $20 on it and gave her the ticket, so she wins $320 to do in the cup. Guess what happened to the ticket? Guess what happened to the ticket, Sal?
Nobody knows, right?
Yeah, it's just gone. It's somewhere in her bedroom, and she's freaking out because everyone in her school is obsessed with these things they call big eyes, which are like these Beanie Boo dolls, and it's like a big thing about collecting the Beanie Boos and who's got which ones and all this stuff, and she didn't really seem to care about losing the ticket until I pointed out that it's like. Yeah, it's like 70 Beanie Boos, and now she's like just scouring the room. But yeah, I mean,
I sort of think I don't know how the courts would handle this, but you should be able to ground her until the Kings win the cup again after.
There's no question. But I mean, the point is like when I made that ticket, it was like a flyer. I was like, oh, this would be a fun souvenir because they were barely going to make the playoffs.
Right.
And it wasn't until game 2 after they won game 2 of the Cup Finals that really started to seem realistic. I just assumed like Brodeur, even as well as the Kings were playing, I just assumed Marty Brodeur. We yelled Marty at him all last night. I just assumed Marty Brodeur was gonna do the Marty Brodeur thing, and no, didn't do it. Gave up 4 goals last night.
I thought East hockey would prevail. I thought they'd slow it down and it would be good. And you know, we went back and forth, you and I, with the Conn Smythe winner, and right now Quick is like minus 750 to win it, I think. But it was even like a week ago. Yeah. But you and I have Pacquiao on a lot of our parlays. I made one.
That's an understatement.
What?
I said that's an understatement. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah. But I made one yesterday. In addition to the many we have, Kings to win the series before yesterday, the Heat tonight, and Pacquiao. I know you're going to hate me, but the Heat just to win tonight. Yeah. And it's like minus 170. I feel like if you think the refs have, switching gears for a second, if you think the refs have screwed the Celtics so far, you ain't seen nothing yet. I think they're ready a whole different screw job tonight.
Well, and also, I don't think people realize how hard it is to win 3 playoff games in a row in the middle of the series. I actually made a friend of mine look it up because I was so surprised that Oklahoma City won last night. Just beating San Antonio 3 straight times in the middle of the series when nobody at San Antonio got hurt is like incredible. Yeah. And it's only happened like 8 times since they expanded the playoffs in like 1983. Wow. And I think like a couple of those times the team didn't even end up winning. Teams that lost 3 straight playoff games and still won the series since 1984, it's only happened 9 times.
Really? Because I think if you won 3 in a row, you'd win 4 in a row. Like if the Celtics won tonight, they would. I think they wrap it up.
You would think.
Same obviously with OKC.
Yeah, you would think. I also think it would just be difficult to beat Miami 3 times in a row anyway. So
yeah,
I'm with
you.
You.
You know, I looked today. The Spurs. No, I'm sorry. The Oklahoma City is like minus 350 to win their series. Yeah. And the Heat is minus 450. Like, how are the Heat a bigger favorite than when it's 2-2?
That's insane. I think the Celtics have a much better chance of winning that series than San Antonio does.
You can get almost 4-1 if you want it.
The thing about the Celtics, they still haven't had that game where they just came out and made 60% of their jump shots and everything went in. They had it. They've had it for like a half, but they haven't had it for a whole game, and that's been kind of their trademark in the playoffs. At least once every round, they've had a game where they just shoot the lights out and the other team doesn't have a chance. So even though I think Miami's going to win tonight, I still have that hope against hope that maybe this will be the game when everything starts going in. You know, it'd be a funny we should spin off the BS Reporter a separate podcast of us discussing our future bets, because we had like a really animated Conn Smythe back and forth, because you were saying Quick was just the best bet ever at even odds, and I was saying you're right, he's the best bet and he's probably going to win, but from a pure odds standpoint, I thought Kopitar was the best bet because he was like 10-1. And it was like, all right, if he gets like 2 game winners and then Quick has 1 game where he gives up like 4 goals or something, like there's a 10-1 chance that could happen. And
well,
then
you talked me out of it. I don't think you meant to talk me out of it. But
I know.
I'm looking back, I'm like, wow, now it's like 15 texts. And I'm like, and then I remember last year your goalie was in line for it too. Who won it last year? I don't remember, but
Thomas won.
You got Thomas. He won. He ended up winning it.
Yeah, he won it. But as we were doing this, I told you I had researched the Conn Smythe winners because I wanted to see, because it seemed like Quick was the logical choice, but history said like 2 out of every 3 times somebody other than a goalie wins it.
Well, it is scary, because I thought Thomas had a game where he gave up 5 goals in the finals last year, and I remember the odds going down, and then I thought he didn't win. But, yeah, if you say he did, well, damn it, we should have done Quick then.
Well, here's where I screwed up. I got kind of swayed by the whole thing about how it was really hard for a goalie to win. Uh-huh. But how it's not hard to win is when the goalie is giving up like a goal and a half per game or less. Yeah. And that's what Quick was on pace to do that, But like,
well, I was thinking, even if he gave up 10 goals in 4 games, which would be outrageous by his standards, the way he's playing, I think he would still win. But
yeah, since 1993, Mike Vernon won the Conn Smythe in 97. Patrick Roy won it in 2001. Cam Ward won it in 2006. Oh, Jiggy won it in 03. And then Tim Thomas. So, 5 times in 17 years.
Yeah.
But Quick is he's been, when I say out of his mind, you don't even think, yesterday they stole the puck and the guy was just point blank. I didn't even think he had a chance to get it by Quick. Quick is like, if he can see the puck, you're not scoring. He's stopping it. But, so I think,
and you know what it is? Have you watched, it seems like shots that would normally be taken by the Devils and other teams, the Blues, they're passing on it. They've seen him save it so many times that they're passing on angles that they should be shooting at, Yeah. They're trying to set up more stuff, and it really has changed the game.
It certainly has established for me that hockey is unlike any other sport, because I went to all of their games during the regular season and had no idea this was going to happen. Yeah. Whereas like Oklahoma City, it was very surprising to me that they came back in this series. It wasn't inconceivable. They showed flashes during the season. The Kings did not really show flashes, which was...
Well, it shows you, and maybe there's another subject for another time, but hockey, NHL, regular season, the least meaningful regular season. And, I'm starting to think a lot of them aren't very meaningful, but hockey is far and away. It's no home ice, nothing.
My dad and I were talking about it, like watching this Devils team. It's really not that good of a team. It makes me think I think the Bruins were really worn out from last year, because you have those long seasons when you make the finals and it ends up being like 110 games or whatever. But man, I feel like even with Horton out, I feel like the Bruins were better than this Devils team.
Yeah, I think Penguins, Kings would have been better. I think Rangers, Kings probably would have been better. But that said, the first 2 games went to overtime. So
yeah, let's come up with. Well, I have it on the phone. Let's come up with a quick basketball recommendation for tonight. I'm looking at the player props.
Yeah.
I have a theory on player props. Tell me, I feel like this might be the most inefficient market out of all the gambling. Because if you look at it like, so they set these props and they clearly pick a number that is a 50-50 number. And then
Right.
the betting public jumps on it and they bet one of the two sides up.
Yeah.
But yet they never change the line. So like, all right, Paul Pierce tonight is minus 130 to score more than 19.5 points.
Mhm.
Or Kevin Garnett is minus 130 to have more than 10.5 rebounds. Rondo is minus 135 to have more than 28.5 assists. Now,
Right.
the odds of all three of those things happening, if they did happen, would mean that the Celtics are going to win tonight, because that would mean that all three of those guys had an awesome game.
Right. Yeah.
Odds are they're in Miami, probably not going to happen. You would say like maybe one of those three things would happen, and since you're getting better than even odds, I would say there's an inefficiency there.
I know you can't bet this, but how about Paul Pierce with 3.5 fouls by halftime? I go over. I mean, if it weren't for Donnie, we would be able to bet something like that, and that's what screws everything up, you know, because you got a guy who could foul out, or you got a possibility of a blowout. Not necessarily that the Celtics would blow the Miami out, but that's what's weird with these props. You get a guy who might not play the fourth quarter if there's a blowout. Like Durant didn't even play really in game
Right.
3. So you really there's a lot going against you.
The best every game is LeBron's over-under for points, rebounds, and assists. It's always like 46 or 45.5. Like there's no better test case for why he's the best player in the league when your over-under for every game is over the 42 club, which I set for like if anyone averages 42 in those three categories per game in the playoffs, you're like a special player. And he's at like 45.5. Here's my lock of the day. I rarely do this.
Go ahead. What is it?
Largest lead, 16.5.
I was going to tell you go over. I was going to tell you that's the one.
Here's the thing. I don't think this is a close game. I think the Celtics either come out and shoot the lights out, or I think it's one of those games that Miami jumps out to the big lead early, and then the Celtics either fight back or they don't. I do not see a topsy-turvy for 4 quarters, tight, close game. And also, like, I think almost in every one of these games, one of the teams has taken a big lead.
Well, let me tell you, that largest lead is a fun bet, and I had it. I didn't tell you about it, but I had it last game over 14, thinking Miami, you know, and it's the largest lead for either team. I was thinking Miami would jump out, and here it is, 21-6 with 5:40 left in the first quarter. I'm like, I want to bet. This is crazy. I want to bet so early on. It's a good enough bet to take.
Well, there's a whole, there's this whole separate world of in-game live betting.
There's another one. I was just going to say, like last night, a friend of mine bet in the second half, Ginobili over 13 points, rebounds, and assists. Like, and he killed that, obviously, you know?
Yeah.
And even like second half, Duncan over 13.5 points and rebounds. He killed that, you know? So even though they lost, like for them to be in that, you know, that was more fun than betting the actual second half of the game. So supposedly the biggest inefficiencies are the casinos that change, or even like I guess they do this on some offshore sportsbooks, casinos that change the odds as the game is going along. So you'll be midway through the second quarter, and you could, the Heat are down 17 in Boston, and you could grab the Heat plus 15 right at that specific point. And it seems like that's when these guys grab the points, and then they try to play it both ways, almost like a stock, like you have the Heat. Yeah.
And then they just try to grab it. But I think there's a limit on what you bet. But at some point,
there's definitely a limit.
Once when President Obama realizes that sports gambling is the key to saving the economy, and we have all these different in-game betting options, I think all this stuff's going to be in play.
Absolutely.
We'll have a card.
4 more years of that if we'll do it. You know what's a fun bet? I did this the other day. This is a real degenerate bet. I didn't have too much on it, but in the third quarter, you know who takes the ball out. So it was game 2 in Miami. I had the Celtics to score first in the second half, minus 130, because they take the ball out. They're a heavy favorite at minus 130 or heavy-ish. And of course, Ray Allen missed a jump shot, and Chalmers hit a 3, and I lost that like 20 seconds in. So
wow.
that was good.
Do you have any home run champion thoughts?
I had money on Batista, and Batista's the only one like in the running. I had Bruce and like Nelson Cruz, and I don't know what's good. I think Batista's my only hope to get hot there. But what do you think? You think Hamilton hangs on?
Well, Hamilton is now even odds. And even odds. And the guy who jumps out at me right now is Adam Dunn at plus 300.
Yeah.
Because Adam Dunn has been put it this way, he's been coming on. He's only four behind Hamilton. He's 2 ahead of everyone in the National League.
Mm-hmm.
Hamilton always gets hurt. He'll miss like 6 weeks out of nowhere with some, plantar fasciitis or something like that. Adam Dunn, I thought that one jumped out at me too.
It's funny because like Kemp was probably like minus 500 when he was on his tear. Looked like no one was going to catch him, and then looked like no one was going to catch Hamilton. Like these guys just disappear for like 2 weeks. It's hard to put a finger on it.
I've been meaning to tell you this for a solid week. I finally figured out what the all-time most degenerate sports bet is.
What is it?
It's betting on the NBA lottery.
Oh yeah.
I looked at it. I want to see what New Jersey's odds were. I just had or Brooklyn now, I guess. They skew the odds so that it's the dumbest bet of all time to bet on the lottery. You have a certain percentage that you know for a fact each team has, and you're betting on skewed odds of those percentages. It's crazy. Yeah. And apparently people bet on this.
How is that worse than betting on the actual lottery where you have no idea what numbers are coming out? At least you have some idea that there's a better chance of one side coming out than the other. But
you're right. That's also stupid. I was just talking about sports bets. I can't believe they even accept bets for the NBA lottery, or that anybody would make them.
Do you remember we called it? We called it last year. It was 20-1. We didn't bet it, of course. Like, what was it? Cleveland by way of the Clippers.
Well, that's the thing. So you could flip it the other way and just use like common sense and weird logic. Like, of course, Cleveland's going to win the lottery with the Clippers pick. We should probably bet on this.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, New Orleans is going to win the lottery during the year when the league owned the team and then screwed everything up with the Chris Paul trade. Like, just the karma of the pick made sense.
Right.
So maybe we should remember that for next year.
Next year, for sure.
And we should also maybe put something down in the Critics' Choice Awards.
Let's do it. Jimmy Kimmel Live for your Critics' Choice Awards. We have tonight. We have Andy Samberg. Later in the week, the Kardashians, Adam Carolla, Ed Norton, and starting Tuesday, our NBA special. I might be heading to Oklahoma City for Media Day next week. Starting next Tuesday. Yeah.
You and me both. I'll be there. Hey, do not count out the Spurs though. I'm going to stay in the haunted hotel again. I want to go another round with the ghost.
Really?
Yeah.
I think you're ready this time. I think you're down to your fighting weight. You're totally gluten free, so that'll scare them away.
The last time I was there, saw a ghost, came home. Police came into my backyard and pointed guns at me and Brad and Dickie, and I lost a $13,000 swing on that Hilton Super Contest because Charlie. What was that guy's name? Charlie Whitehurst. Because Charlie Whitehurst beat me.
Yeah.
It was a tough week for me. Anyway, Cousin Sal. Maybe if we see you in Oklahoma City, maybe we'll do a podcast.
All right, good times, Bill.
All right, take care, buddy.
Take care, bye.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.